Welcome to a journey through the hidden financial arteries of civilization. Today, we explore how municipal bonds built the very foundation of modern America. Our story begins in 1817. New York was a growing port, but the interior of the continent remained a rugged, inaccessible wilderness. Governor DeWitt Clinton proposed a massive canal to link the Hudson River to the Great Lakes. Critics were ruthless, calling it Clinton's Ditch, but the vision was grander than the mockery. Thousands of laborers began the grueling task of blasting through solid rock and wading through swamps. When the Erie Canal finally opened, it didn't just move goods, it transformed New York City into the financial capital of the world. This leads us to a fundamental question. How do we pay for things that benefit everyone, but are too expensive for any one person? This is the public goods problem. Imagine a group of farmers who all need a bridge to reach the market, but no single farmer can afford it. Enter the municipal bond, a financial time machine. It allows a community to pull future tax revenue into the present to build today. With this tool, America expanded. Clay figures laid down tracks for railroads, dug deep for sewer systems, and erected glowing streetlights in growing cities. Now, let's look at the mechanics. The market is a three-part ecosystem: the governments, the intermediaries, and the private investors. Governments issue the bonds. Banks and lawyers facilitate the deal. And investors, like pension funds or wealthy households, provide the necessary capital. A key incentive is the tax-exempt status. Consider a 6% corporate bond versus a 4.5% municipal bond. After taxes, that 6% might only be 4%. But the municipal bond stays at 4.5, making it more attractive to many. This creates a paradox. Wealth flows toward the investors, while the resulting infrastructure serves the entire community, from the rich to the poor. The 20th century saw an explosion of growth. Streetcars, power grids, and schools popped up across the landscape like clockwork. But the system faced its greatest test in 1929. As the stock market crashed, tax revenues evaporated, and cities struggled to pay their debts. Yet, from the ashes of the Depression came a new boom. Post-war America used bonds to build the interstate highways and modern hospitals we use today. Today, we face a modern paradox. We live in a trillion-dollar ecosystem interlinked with the global economy, yet our infrastructure is aging. There's a constant tension between the public good and the chase for investor fees. How we balance these will define the next century. As night falls on the modern city, remember the invisible threads of finance that keep the lights on and the water flowing. Thanks for watching. The year is 1975. New York City is running out of money. Not gradually, not theoretically, literally. The largest city in the United States is approaching insolvency. For years, officials had relied on short-term borrowing to finance long-term obligations. Debt refinanced debt. Temporary solutions became permanent practices. Investors assumed New York would always find another lender willing to roll over existing obligations. Then, confidence disappears. Suddenly, buyers stop showing up. The mechanism that had quietly financed the city begins to seize. And this reveals a critical truth about municipal finance. Municipal bonds do not function purely on mathematics. They function on trust. The city still possesses buildings, roads, subways, and millions of residents. None of that changes overnight. What changes is investor belief. Once lenders question repayment, borrowing costs rise. Higher borrowing costs create greater stress. Greater stress creates greater fear. Fear produces further increases in borrowing costs. The cycle feeds itself. Eventually, New York narrowly avoids catastrophe through a combination of state intervention, federal support, spending controls, and restructuring. The city survives, but the lesson echoes across financial markets. A municipal bond is not merely a promise backed by taxes, it is a promise backed by confidence in future taxes. The distinction becomes crucial, and it introduces the hidden flaw that follows the market into the modern era. The original promise of municipal bonds is simple: borrow today. Build productive assets, generate future prosperity, repay debt from future growth. But what happens when borrowing finances obligations that do not directly generate growth? What happens when governments borrow to postpone difficult political decisions? This is where the central paradox deepens. The same tool that finances productive infrastructure can also finance delay, and financial markets often struggle to distinguish between the two. To understand why, imagine another whiteboard. At the top sits a city government. Beneath it are three categories. The first category is productive investment: a bridge, a water treatment facility, a port expansion. These assets potentially increase economic activity. The second category is maintenance: repairing roads, updating schools, replacing aging infrastructure, necessary expenses that preserve existing value. The third category is financial patchwork: borrowing to cover operating shortfalls, borrowing to postpone pension contributions, borrowing because current revenues are insufficient. The challenge is that all three can produce bonds. From an investor's perspective, the securities may appear similar. From an economic perspective, they are profoundly different. One creates future capacity, one preserves capacity, one merely shifts costs forward in time. Borrowing is often politically attractive because costs appear distant, benefits are immediate, pain is deferred. Future administrations and future taxpayers inherit the consequences. This incentive structure does not automatically create disaster, but it creates vulnerability, and vulnerability eventually encounters catalysts, like Orange County, California in 1994. Orange County declares bankruptcy after suffering enormous investment losses. Unlike many crises, this one is not caused by infrastructure spending. It emerges from financial engineering. What seems stable becomes unstable. The county loses billions. Bankruptcy follows. Risk rarely disappears. It usually changes location. Then comes Detroit. For decades, Detroit symbolizes American industrial strength. The automobile industry drives prosperity. Population expands. Tax revenues grow. But economic systems evolve. Manufacturing declines. Population shrinks. Tax bases erode. Fixed obligations remain. The city's financial assumptions depend on a world that no longer exists. Detroit becomes the largest municipal bankruptcy in American history in 2013. The bankruptcy illustrates a critical reality. Infrastructure alone cannot guarantee prosperity. Nowhere does this become more dramatic than Puerto Rico. By the early 21st century, Puerto Rico accumulates tens of billions of dollars in debt. Debt can accelerate growth. Debt cannot manufacture growth indefinitely. Who really profits from municipal bonds? The popular answer is taxpayers. The reality is more complicated. Studies repeatedly find that affluent households capture significant portions of the value created by municipal tax exemptions. Public purpose, private profit, both operating simultaneously. When evaluating any financial innovation, ask 4 questions. First, what problem is this solving? Second, what assumptions must remain true? Third, who receives the benefits? Fourth, who absorbs losses when conditions change? Financial systems' true architecture becomes visible only under stress. Municipal bonds reveal how societies solve collective problems. They built modern America. That much is undeniable. But the plumbing beneath it all is complex. Beneath the concrete and steel lies a promise about the future, a mechanism that converts tomorrow's expectations into today's reality. Thanks for watching.